Hi guys, I'm Laura Vitale, and on this episode of Laura in the Kitchen, I want to share with you my recipe for croissants. Now, croissants have been requested here for a very long time, and to be honest, I've been kind of putting it off just because, not that this is a difficult recipe, but it's time consuming. And you guys know I'm all about sort of easy to make, easy to shop for kind of recipes, but this is a bit more involved, but it's worth every bit of effort. I promise the end result is just incredible. What we're going to start with is making the dough. You'll need all-purpose flour, granulated sugar, salt. This is rapid rise or quick rise yeast. You'll need some unsalted butter that's been softened at room temperature, and some cold whole milk. You want to make sure it's whole milk. It's really important. Now this is like the first step of the croissants, and then as the recipe progresses, I'll show you the other steps, obviously. Now, because you're using a quick rise yeast, you don't need to proof it, which makes this really easy. I'm going to put all of our ingredients into my standing mixer that's been fitted with a dough hook attachment, and try to get actually in the bowl and not on the bowl, but that's okay. Some of the butter. Now, there's going to be more butter coming just in a bit, but for now, I just need a little bit. And you'll need your milk. Bring this up and mix that until your dough comes together. Now what I have here is like a pie plate, essentially. And I'm gonna flour my pie plate, not too heavily, but you want to flour the bottom because we're gonna get this rising in here. I'm just gonna keep my eye on my dough to make sure it comes together well, and then we'll move on to the next step. That is gorgeous. Okay, lightly sticky. I'm gonna pop this on a floured surface. Let's see if I can get it all out of here. I don't have my dough scraper near me. I forgot to get it out, but that's okay. Nothing my hands can't fix, right? Flour your hands actually makes it easy to get anything out that's been sticky. Oh, that made a rhyme. Okay, get this out of here. Form it into a disc. It's beautiful dough. Very foolproof, but it is something that you need to put a little TLC in it, It's a good process. It's a very relaxing process. Think of it that way. And then what I do is I just kind of pinch the bottom, flatten this into like a disc, and I am going to place this in I'm going to flour the top in my pie plate. I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap. I'm going to pop it into the fridge for a minimum of 6 hours. I always do it overnight. It's just better. This is not going to rise as much as you think it should, but it's going to be perfectly fine. So I'm going to wrap this up, pop it in the fridge. Now, while the dough is still in the fridge, it's been in the fridge overnight, we need to get going on making the butter layer. Now, if this scares you, don't worry. Croissants are flaky and buttery because there's a butter layer in there, so don't panic. But I do want to point out that you absolutely cannot use the butter that comes in a tub that you can spread on toast, because that never hardens the way you need it to be. You need like sticks of butter. It needs to be really, really cold, and that way it's nice and hard and keeps the shape. Now, you're going to need to form a 7 by 7 inch square with the butter. So what I do is I just use my 8 by 8 inch square baking pan as a guide, because I'm going to need to make the butter layer just a bit smaller than this. So it's just a really easy way, because I don't have rulers. I have a tape measure that I literally use to make my croissants, which you'll see later. But for now, we're just going to use the baking pan. Now, I've got 2 big pieces of parchment, and again, don't worry. Now you see, we just need a little bit more butter, probably about that much, and we'll be at 7 inches. So that looks good, and you can overlap them, of course. And then what I do is I just do it like that. So that looks about, from here to here, it looks about 7 inches to me. And again, no one's coming over and testing you. You're not going to get graded on this, so don't panic. And then what you do is you just put your butter. That's why it's kind of easy. You can put them in sticks, but it's just a little bit more difficult to blend it together into one big square. So that's why I like to cut them like so. And then what you do, now because this is going to move, you see that? You take another piece, you put it on top, a piece of parchment. And then I just take both pieces closest to me and I hold it down with my weight. Then you take a rolling pin and you literally are going to roll this together. Now it's going to get bigger, of course, than 7 by 7, but we're going to trim the edges and it's going to work out perfectly. By the way, a rolling pin like this works a little bit better than this. It's just more comfortable on the hand, but whatever you got. Now you can see that is looking good, but now it's no longer a 7 by 7, so we need to trim it. So I'm definitely going to have to trim it this way. And then what you do with that butter, it's a process. It is. But that's what croissants are. Again, it's not difficult. I mean, how difficult can it be to roll some butter between parchment paper? But it is a process. But I'm telling you, when you've got time to make homemade croissants, you'll understand why. They're incredible. Just don't keep them in the house if you have no self-control like me. Because I am the queen of zero self-control. I just take the rest and put it on top. And then I'm just going to literally roll that again, except I'm going to roll it onto itself pretty much. That looks good enough. Right? All right. And croissants are not a diet food. So oven's preheated for a different recipe. So no, I don't want to hear if whether or not you can leave out the butter, because no, can't. And then I just roll the very top just into the layer of butter. I mean, it just takes a second because now you pretty much have your shape already formed. All you're trying to do now is combine that those little pieces that we put on top and kind of make it one even square. And look, the great thing about using big pieces of parchment is that you constantly rotate, and that way it makes life easy. And I am all about keeping life easy. And you can also just push with your fingers like so, because at this point the butter starts to kind of come to room temperature a bit. And just push it back into shape. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this into the fridge for about an hour or so, because we just worked with this butter. It's starting to come to room temperature, and if I try to roll this with a dough now, it is just going to pretty much leak everywhere. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to just stick it just like this into the fridge for around 30 minutes or so, probably an hour would be better. We'll move on to the next step. My butter was in the fridge for about a half an hour, and this is the star. This is a dough we made yesterday. Now you can see it has risen, but it's not like bright dough when you leave it outside for an hour. It's like, pfft, it's just risen perfectly, and it's exactly what you're looking for. So now we can get going on the rolling out process. Do not be afraid of this process. There is nothing to be afraid of. Now I'm just deflating it a little bit with my hand. I'm not going to need to re-roll this out or anything because it's a pretty dense dough. Beautiful. I do, however, you know what? I think it'll be much better if I move that there and I move that there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flour this. Now, make sure you have one of these pastry brushes on hand because you're going to need to do a lot of brushing. Now, you're going to roll this till it's about a 10 by 10 inch square. And I've got my 8 by 8 baking pan here, so I'm going to use that as my guide. I want it to be obviously bigger than my 8 by 8 baking pan, but I want to keep this as square as possible. I mean, when I tell you this dough works, you can see that it does. It works really beautifully, and I'm really happy with the way it has turned out. And then what I do is I just use my hands to keep it all the same thickness, but kind of shape that into a square. That's definitely 8 by 8 inch. Joe, shake your head if you agree that that's an 8 by 8, that 10 by 10. All right, we have too much fun around here, but what can I say? Then I'm just going to take my butter square, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my butter square on an angle so that it's one corner is facing up with this corner. You can see that. And then you take it one corner. Now this is where a brush comes in. You're going to need to brush off any excess flour because that will prevent from having really great you know, really great flaky layers. So brush that off, and then you're gonna stretch it out if you need to. This is really forgiving dough. Make sure you brush off all the excess. Okay, and then you bring this in. So now what you have is a nice little square. Brush, brush, brush. What doesn't really matter, because at this point you actually are going to need to flour again, just because you're going to have to roll this out into an 8 by 24 inch. Now, the width is roughly about 8 inches already. So you're going to have to just roll this out to 24 inches, which is 1, 2, and 3 times the amount of this. So what I do is I start here. So I think, oh, 1, and then there's 16, and then there's 24. So I want this to end right about here. If it's an inch or so short, I promise I'm not going to come over and I'm not going to test you on this. You just want it to be, you want it to be pretty, you know, pretty right, because you know, you are working with dough, so it is a bit more tricky than if you were just working with a quick bread. You know, if you were just making a batter and putting it in a pan and baking it. So make sure you do the very best you can to keep this the same thickness. And you just roll this out a little bit longer. And then I'm just going to even this things out a little tiny bit. Okay. Now take your pastry. First of all, take one of the pieces of parchment paper. Marry the two together so that it's there's no butter on there, but you're not putting butter on your baking sheet. Put some flour on there. Keeps anything from sticking. Now you take your pastry brush and you brush off the whole surface of this, of your dough. Then you fold this in thirds like you would an envelope, however you call it. And you want to make sure you brush off the flour, because that is going to be one of the layers. Okay, don't worry about the bottom because it's going to get rolled out anyway. And now what you do is you put this on your baking sheet. I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap, and I'm going to stick this into the fridge for 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, I'm going to show you what we do, and I'll explain a bit more. But for now, wrap this up. I kind of just tuck, and I just like to take a kitchen towel just because it's heavier, and I put that on top. All right, into the fridge for 30 minutes, and then I will show you the next step. That looks awesome. Okay. Let me make some room here. Put a little bit more flour. Okay, now, this is a part where you must pay attention, because otherwise I'm going to have to be here all night. And nobody wants that. I'm going to take this dough. Now, the width is perfect. You're just going to have to roll it out again. Length, you know, you want the length to be right. Now what I'm going to do is I am just going to roll it same length as before, okay? Make sure you keep your pastry brush on hand, because you're going to have to brush off the excess flour. Now you see, the folding we did when we folded it like a letter is now creating layers. The thing about croissants that makes them so good is the layer. It's the layers of flakiness, the butteriness, all that plays into a factor when you're making croissants. If your dough doesn't stretch as easily as mine does, it's because the butter is getting too warm. So what you do is you just fold it in half, pop it into the fridge for 10 minutes at a time, and then you just re-roll it out. You unfold it and then you re-roll it out. That's really the easiest way to do it. I'm just gonna roll this out. I want it to be about there. That looks about right to me. Now taking pastry brush, brush off the surface. All right, fold this in thirds again. Brush off that excess flour. Now, when you are going to put this back into the fridge and you're going to repeat exactly what we just did, roll it out and fold it in thirds again 2 more times. So I'm going to put this into the fridge, after 30 minutes, you take it out, you roll it out again to an 8 by 24 inch rectangle, put it back in the fridge, and you do that 2 more times. On the second time, you're gonna put this into the fridge overnight. So when I see you next, it will be tomorrow, and then we will be ready then to make our croissants. So I'm gonna repeat, put it back on the same baking sheet. Make sure you kind of pat it to make sure it's one even, it's nice and even. So cover this up into the fridge for 30 minutes. Take it out, do it again, put it back in for 30 minutes, take it out, do it again, put it in the fridge overnight. That's it. Cover this up, pop it in there. I'm going to do this a couple more times. When I see you tomorrow, or for you it'll be the next few seconds, we'll be ready to making homemade croissants. So you see, it's not difficult. There's nothing difficult about rolling out a piece of dough. It's just time consuming. If you want to put the effort in, I promise you, I will put my Laura Vitale stamp that it will be worth every second. If it's raining out for us, it's gonna start snowing soon. So what better else thing to do than stay at home, roll out some dough, make croissants. That's all I'm saying. My dough was in the fridge overnight, and you wanna make sure that you cover it well with plastic wrap when you pop it in the fridge. So to recap, when I rolled it out, that you saw, I put it into the fridge for 30 minutes, then I took it out and I re-rolled it. And then I put it back in the fridge for 30 minutes, rolled it out, and then after that I just left it in there overnight. So what I'm going to do now, you need to roll this out to about a 44-inch long rectangle, 8 by 44 inch. Now my surface here is about 24 inches, so I'm going to cut this in half only because I don't have enough surface here on this counter to be able to do that. So I'm just going to carefully cut this in half, do it as even as you possibly can, set that aside. I also got a couple of baking sheets with parchment paper on them to have them ready. If you come close, if the cameraman will do his job very well, come close, you can already see what we've created, which is just tons and tons of layers that when you bake these, they are going to be puffed and golden and absolutely magnificent. So a 44-inch long rectangle, so this is going to be about, you want it to be about 22 inches, so think about it this way. Alt, 24. So you want this to stop right about here. I don't have a really big ruler. I just, I do this by eye, really. And you want to make sure that you keep it around 8 inches. So take your time, but also don't take too much time, because if your kitchen is super, super hot, this is not going to roll out the way it should. So if it starts kind of going back on itself, you can also turn it like that a little bit, as long as you keep one side 8 inches. If it starts to not want to cooperate and it's just getting too warm too quickly, fold it, pop it in the fridge for a little bit, and then unfold it and roll it out. Once you have it rolled out, I'm going to brush off any excess flour. Then what you do is you just take a sharp knife, and I'm going to just cut the very edges to make it as neat as I can. Then you take, could use a really large ruler. I don't have one. I've got one of these that's this little popsicle stick, or whatever this is called. I don't even know what this is called, to be honest. It's like little skewers. And you're going to make a mark every 6 inches. Let's see. We're going to be a little bit short, but that's okay. And then what you do is a little less than 6 inches, maybe about 5.5. And you're going to cut straight down. I'm just going to cut each one on an angle like so, and try to, you don't want to rush the process, but at the same time, what you don't want is for the dough to get warm. Now, some might be a little bit small, some might be a little bit bigger, but that's okay. You know what? These are homemade. This is not a machine. It's what it should look like you put a lot of effort into it. Then I just take one side, and you can see it's not, you want the point to be in the center, so I just take my rolling pin and ever so lightly kind of roll out the one side here, just like so, and then you can pat it down with your fingers as well if you want to, but you can just stretch it out. That's what I do anyway. And then you don't want to do this too tightly, but then you just roll these like so. I just pinch the bottom. Sometimes it'll just come undone. And then you take the edges and you pinch them together like so. And you're going to put these on your baking sheet that's been lined with parchment paper. Now, the edges, when you pinch the edges, they're going to come undone, but that's okay. Don't worry about it. It'll work out. Now, I've got my croissants here. These are really teeny tiny ones, only because I didn't want to have any waste, so I figured I would make a couple of little tiny ones. Now, you know, some of mine are bigger than others. The thickness are all the same, and the reason why that is, you should be able to get 14 really good sized croissants out of the dough, but because I don't have a long enough surface and I had to cut my dough in half, I wanted to kind of use up all the dough that I had, but the thickness is perfect, and they will start to detach, but the reason why you pinch the bottoms together, the little edges together, is because it helps keep their shape. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to just cover them with a little kitchen towel and keep them somewhere warm for about an hour or so. They'll plump up a little bit, not too much, but they'll plump up enough. And then you also want to get your oven preheated to 400 so that that's ready. And then when these have risen a little bit, we will be ready to pop them into the oven. They look amazing. Now they're not doubled in size, but they're perfect. And I did want to point out one more time that, you know, this recipe, if you were going by the book, it'll make 14 nice sized croissants. But the beauty about making baked goods at home is that I don't want any waste, so I make them slightly smaller so that I can use up the entire recipe in the whole dough. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to brush the tops with some egg wash, which is just one egg being that I just beat with a little bit of milk, and you want to make sure that they're nicely covered with the egg wash, because this is going to give them really beautiful color. And I have my oven preheated. You can see that the ends come apart, but it keeps the shape, which is why we pinch them. And I have my oven preheated to 400, and you want to make sure that you have that ready for you. I'm just going to brush all these and get them ready for the oven. They look gorgeous. Now, oh, I missed one. I don't know how that was possible. Okay, so before you turn your oven on, you want to make sure that you place your 2 oven racks at the very top and the very bottom of the oven. So the racks should be one at the very top, one at the very bottom. I'm going to stick these in there for about 20 to 25 minutes. Halfway throughout the cooking time, I'm going to switch them. I'm going to put the tray that was at the top at the bottom and the tray that was at the bottom at the top, just so that everything gets a really even cooking. And I'm going to rotate them as well so that it gets really beautiful golden brown color, and I'll show you what they look like when they're done. It'll take about 20 to 25 minutes total. These babies baked for 23 minutes, and I have to just say, there are times where even I think to myself, that's really impressive. And I don't think that to myself very often, because you guys know I'm all about really quick to make recipes. I'm very casual. I'm not really someone that decorates cakes and things like that. But when you can create a croissant that looks this magnificent, you gotta pat yourself on the back. I mean, come on. If you can make something that looks like it just came out of a beautiful bakery, you have to be pretty proud of yourself. Now, like I said, these would make bigger ones if you would make 14 of them. You know, mine are a bit smaller. There's another tray back there. They're perfection, and I'm literally dying to dive in so that I can show you. Let me take you closer to me, because I want you to see, as we pull this apart, it's just really hard to show, but look at maybe you can see it like that. I just want to be able to show you the incredible amount of layers in there. That is a croissant. That is what you want. You want layers. You want the inside to just be flaky. You want it to look, I have a pretty awesome, let's face it, a pretty awesome camera guy here, so he's going to be able to show you exactly what I'm talking about. That flakiness, I mean, that's what you're looking for in a croissant. I'm pulling this apart so that I can really show you a good, a good picture of this. I almost want you to take this inside the camera and see it. As for flavor, they are truly on point. I don't know what else to say about them other than the fact that they are just absolutely worth every second of effort. Now, like I mentioned in the beginning, this is not a difficult recipe, it's time consuming. And I also did want to mention that you might not want to do this in the summer months, because the hotter it is, the more difficult it's going to be to keep that butter cold when you're rolling it out, because the last thing you want to do is warm up that butter, because the more the butter warms up, the more it's going to melt, and you won't be left with flakiness. You're going to be left with just a big mess. So do this in the winter months if you can. It's definitely worth doing. I hope you enjoy spending time with me. The recipe will be written on my website at laurainthekitchen.com as detailed as I possibly can so that it makes it as clear and as easy as possible for you to follow. I hope you enjoy spending time with me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.